to Attenuation, a weekly podcast where two friends come together to drink beer, discuss beer styles and trends, and just generally ruminate on the meaning of life, aka beer. If you enjoy your time with us, we invite you to become a weekly listener and subscribe to the podcast. Without further ado, here is this week's episode.
Hello and welcome to episode 11 of Attenuation, a beer podcast. My name is Jason and I'm joined by my best friend since 8th grade, Steven.
Hello.
There, you did it. See, we blew it last episode.
Got it.
That's the patented hello. So today we're going to do a deep dive into Anchor Brewing and cover some of the history and beers that they make at that brewery. But first, got to do the best part about doing the podcast. You got to drink some beer.
Yeah, I will say I'm very excited about this episode because I started looking into the history of Anchor Brewing. Oh, it started to just blow my mind. So anyway, prepare to have your minds blown because this is like OG American craft beer.
Oh, dude, I'm ready.
Just in case you heard the opening and were thinking I don't really care. You should care. This is awesome. Just a little side note.
Strap in. So Steven was properly prepared for this episode, and he actually has a beer from Anchor, which that's really, really intelligent foresight. I was not so intelligent. So
Okay. Well, just I was going to say in my defense, not really in my defense. I thought today, oh crap, I should get some Anchor beer. And my wife volunteered to run to Total Wine and see what they had there. So she found one. She found the Anchor Porter.
Nice.
So I was really hoping to get the Anchor Steam beer, which is the original Anchor beer. And it's pretty easy to find, by the way. If I think most grocery stores will carry it. If you're wondering if you've ever seen anything by Anchor, you might recognize Anchor Steam beer. But anyway, I got the Anchor Porter, so I'm pretty excited about that.
All right, so I strip you of all credit and all foresight, and all compliments go to your wife who got that beer for you.
Yeah, I should have run with your version of the story.
I know, you didn't have to tell
I
the
was
listeners
thinking about this
that.
all week.
You didn't have to tell the listeners that, but it's too late. All right, so I'll go first. I am drinking Pineapple Shake IPA. This is from Westbrook Brewing. They are located in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. And this is a Milkshake IPA. It's 7% alcohol. And it says on the side of the can, it's an IPA brewed with lactose, vanilla, and pineapple. So I'm a pretty big fan of Milkshake IPA. But yeah, I think they can be hit or miss. So I'm hoping this is a good one. So I'm going to pour it. And I'm going to glean some information.
I think this may fall into that category of beers that a brewer did well and then everybody started to do it and maybe didn't do it quite as well.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it got really popular and then everyone just immediately tried to put one out, I'm sure. So I'm going to give some nose notes and then I'll hand it over to Steven to introduce his beer. Oh, wait, first, I forgot. I'm a huge snob now and I also look at the color, which is beautiful, deep orange, opaque. And then it has a nice sustaining head.
It's blurry to me, but it looks way maltier than I thought.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just the fruit.
Yeah, and there might be kind of from the lactose too. It smells really good. It smells like orange juice, actually. And I'm definitely getting the vanilla on the nose. And a little bit of you do get a little bit of the hop pine, but it's really popping, fresh orange juice. So I'm excited. I'm going to dive into this one and let Steven take over and introduce his beer.
All right, cool. Because we were talking about Anchor Brewing today, I really wanted to drink an Anchor beer. I found this Anchor Porter. When I started reading about this beer, like I said, I was excited about the history of this brewery anyway, but I read that this beer was originally brewed in 1972 or something, and in craft brew years, that's so long ago. I mean, that's prehistoric, essentially, because really craft beer didn't start to become popular really until the late 90s. So the fact that they were making this craft porter in 1972 is just, again, a testament to how cool Anchor Brewing is. So I'm very, very excited to try this. It is classic American porter, 5.6%. Pouring it out. Really, really dark. I would say, again, I can't say this isn't true to style because this is the OG craft porter. So it's perfect to style, but it doesn't seem as dark. Even the head has a nice brown tinge to it. Really, really great milk chocolate, a little bit of toffee and caramel on the nose. Smells very sweet. That's awesome. Those are my nose notes. Chocolate, caramel, and toffee with a
Nice.
sweetness.
Well, salute. That sounds like a good one. All right, so I'll give my tasting notes on this one. I like this one, actually. So the entrance is like orange juice and pineapple, and then it develops into, it's really creamy, kind of milk sugar and vanilla. And then the aftertaste, the finish is a lot of that vanilla lingers, and then I get some of the residual hop flavors too. So overall, yeah, I like this one a lot. Actually, I would give this a thumbs up. This is a milkshake IPA that I would drink again, and I kind of enjoy this style. And it's surprising because it is 7%, which is pretty strong, I would say. But I'm not getting any of the alcohol whatsoever.
Tell me the brewer again on that one.
Oh, so this is Westbrook Brewing Company.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, Westbrook. I've had some stuff from Westbrook. Their Goza is actually pretty good.
Oh, cool. Oh, I like to try their Goza.
Yeah. They have a key lime Goza actually that's pretty good too. So
yeah, lime Goza. That's, I think, some of the best Gozas are the lime and watermelon, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So would you drink that again?
Yeah, I think I would definitely drink this again. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to get it, but yeah, if this was available locally, I would drink this again. I'm enjoying this one for sure.
And that's a style you like?
I do like milkshake IPAs. I have to be in the mood. It's kind of like drinking a sweet stout. It's kind of like you're drinking a sweet IPA, which I think for a lot of people, that's not what they want to experience. But if you're in the right mood for one, I do really like them.
Yeah, it's like a sweet IPA, but not in the way of like where you get like malt sweetness in especially some of the stronger IPAs. It's like a fruity sweetness, right?
Right, yeah, exactly. So you don't get malt sweetness. It is a fruity sweetness, and I feel like you get a lot of sweetness from like the lactose and the milk sugar.
Yeah.
And then another thing that's kind of absent, I feel like it gets pushed to the back as a lot of the more traditional like pine, flavors of the hop. So yeah, it's different. I can definitely see why people might not like this style. But yeah, like I said, if you're in the right mood, it's good.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about on the trends episode where it's like it's almost like the IPA is used as a backbone, it's just a tropical backbone, and then they do smoothie stuff to it. But the IPA base basically just used to amplify the fruit flavors or something.
Yeah, I feel like this style is kind of like made for higher drinkability and to be more popular. Like this is going to do better with more people.
Yeah, but like calling it an IPA is like.
Actually, it's funny that you finished my thought. I actually didn't fully express it, but I was almost going to say you almost can't even call these IPAs. It's almost wouldn't describe this as an IPA.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a few sour IPAs, like one from Evil Twin. It's called What is Blue Raspberry Anyway or something. I think that's what it's called. Their titles are funny. But it was like labeled a Blue Raspberry Sour IPA, and the whole time I'm drinking, I'm like, I just think this is a sour, But like, I assume they probably use some sort of IPA base, or they use enough, like, I don't know, hopping and dry hopping or something to call it an IPA, or to feel like they could call it an IPA. But it was very weird that it didn't taste anything like any IPA that I'd ever had before. So
now that you mention that, yeah, I almost would say this style shares more in common with like the lactose sours.
Yeah.
Like where they fruit it, the smoothie sours where they fruit it, they put the lactose. Like it's a lot more like that than I would say like an IPA.
Yeah. That's cool.
Nevertheless, I do like it. So, how is your anchor beer there?
This beer is dope.
Nice. I'm glad you like it.
Oh, I found the only porter I ever want ever again. This is so good. It has like just enough. It's like drinking like a frou-frou coffee, like has just enough like coffee bitterness to get that like nice coffee flavor, but not overwhelming. And then just a nice sort of milk chocolate flavor that kind of runs through the whole thing. I'm doing my hand thing now. Jason taught me this. This is where you like use your hands to simulate the rise and fall of different flavors throughout the beer. So
yeah, you gotta map them out. It's it's the Italian in me. I can't talk. I can't speak without using my hands.
But yeah, like in terms of like if I had to just pick like what a porter tastes like, this is it. Just enough like chocolate and toffee running through the whole thing with this nice like crisp coffee bitterness at the end that just balances it perfectly. It's so good. And like the 5.6%, it's just drinkable. Even on a hot night, I could be sitting on my back porch drinking this for sure. It's just so good.
So you heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. We found your gateway
Yeah,
into
I'm
the
just going to keep
style.
drinking this over and over again.
That's all you got to do. If you do that, then all of a sudden you're going to be drinking Fundamental Observation.
The other beer that I think I would say that I've drank that is closest to this, at least that I can remember, is Black Butte Porter from Deschutes.
That's an excellent gateway. Yeah, that's a really good beer. I'm super stoked you like it. That's awesome.
Big thumbs up on this one. I think I'm going to buy Anchor beer anytime I see it now, too, just because I love this brewery.
Yeah, now that you know the history, you're like an Anchor nerd. All right, well, I'm looking at the script, and I'm not going to mess up this time because I have it in big bold font. Do we have any beer news this week, Steven?
Well, I did want to mention this new beer ingredient that you may start seeing in your beer. Still probably a little unique to probably a few different breweries. This came out earlier this year, but there's a new ingredient out from New Zealand. It was developed there. It's called Phantasm Powder, Phantasm. Phantasm powder, and basically it's derived from the skin of Sauvignon Blanc grapes. These grapes the grape skins are high in what's called thiols. Thiols are these like sulfur alcohol compounds that are also present in hop oils, and they have been found to play a huge role, even though the percentage of thiols in hops is very, very small. They've been found to play a large role in the tropical flavors and aromas of hops. So now they have this like concentrated version of the hop thiols, and they're pumping them into beers, especially like tropical IPAs, trying to amp up the tropical flavors and aromas to even higher levels. So I'm kind of excited. I actually have a beer coming in a few weeks from Anchorage Brewing, which is one of like only 5 or 6 breweries in the country that were licensed to start using this Phantasm powder. So it's an IPA brewed by Anchorage Brewing. Most likely I'll drink that one on the podcast, so give you guys an idea of maybe if it really makes a difference or if it's dumb hype.
Well, I'm on board. Like we talked about mango Pepsi, any new thing, I want to try it. I'm the sucker audience for this. And I just looked online and they have Other Half actually they say they have a double mosaic dream experimental version with Phantasm powder. I would die to try that. That sounds so good because I already love Other Half IPAs in general. So
Dang, I didn't see that. That's amazing.
yeah, it's sold out.
Yeah, so I'm excited to get my hands on a Phantasm powder IPA, see if it, lives up to the hype.
Yeah, that's cool. That's interesting. So we'll have to follow that and see. All right, are you ready for the main topic?
I'm ready.
The history of Anchor Brewing.
So I guess we'll start at the very, very beginning because where else would you start? But Anchor Brewing was actually not originally Anchor Brewing. It was actually originally Golden City Brewing. Started in 1896. So in around 1871, a German man named Gottlieb Breckel bought an old beer and billiard saloon in San Francisco for $3,500.
Wait, how much?
$3,500. And
guess
I
it was-
actually did a little I did a money conversion. This will get even more interesting later in the story, but the money conversion to today's money is about $80,000.
Okay.
So I thought it was gonna be more than that.
Yeah, still a deal, man. In San Francisco property. Wow.
Yeah, right. So yeah, I bought this beer and billiard saloon and for $3,500 and turned it into a brewery. So again, it was Golden City Brewing, and they produced what was called a steam beer. So you have to remember that this is the days of the gold rush. So there's tons of people coming to San Francisco, like hundreds of thousands of people, and they all are, first of all, they're all mining for gold. And at the end of the day, what do they want to do, Jason?
They want to drink beer.
Oh yeah. Like the demand for beer was high, and only way to keep up with that demand was they couldn't brew just a lager because first of all, refrigeration was expensive. If you've ever been to San Francisco, it's cold, but it's not really that cold. It's
Yeah.
basically just 60 degrees year round. So there's just no like natural cold places there, and refrigeration was expensive or non-existent. So cold lagering the beers was just one not that practical, and it also just took so long, and they couldn't keep up with the demand for the beer. So they made this experimental beer that ended up being called steam beer, where they used a lager yeast and they fermented at warmer ale temperatures, which that's kind of been a theme for a few different types of beer like Kolsch and cream ale, where it just produces a crisper style of beer. But the interesting thing about the steam beer is that they would like pump it up into these shallow pools up on top of on the roof where it would cool overnight, and then they'd barrel it, and it was like a week-long process, and that was it. Like that's such a fast turnaround for beer.
Wow, that is fast.
Yeah. But in order to keep up with the demand, that's what they did. So it's kind of funny because nobody can nail down exactly why they call it steam beer. Like the most common theory is that because they cooled it up on the roof, when they pumped the wort up there, it would be steaming off the roof.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Steam beer.
There's another theory that says they had to like pump off some steam before they could like bottle it, I guess. There's another one where there's a similar German beer brewed kind of in the same way translates to steam beer. That's actually probably the most likely because it's a German dude brewing this beer. I think it's called Dampf beer. Dampf beer translates to steam beer. So that's honestly the most likely. But the beer cooling on the rooftop, steaming into the night is the coolest theory.
Yeah, that's a much more romantic explanation.
Yeah, I want to go with that one.
It's also such a cool use of the local environment because even though it's 60 during the day, it does get much cooler at night.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So,
yeah. So you don't have a consistent cold temperature, but it's a use of the cold nights to cool the beer.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So they started making steam beer. It was very popular in San Francisco. And then in 1896, Gottlieb Breckel, I'll tell you a few interesting things about him. It's actually kind of funny. There is not a picture of him. Nobody has a picture of this man.
Huh.
Which again, I mean, this is late 1800s, but still, like they had pictures from that time. Nobody can find a picture of this guy, and even finding records of him was hard because a lot of the San Francisco records were destroyed in the 1906 earthquake and fires. But even with that, like it's just really hard to find records. So it's even hard to figure out exactly how old he was or when he became a naturalized U.S. citizen. But they did finally find one document. It was a San Francisco voter registration form, and they were able to find him and his son, and it looks like he became a naturalized citizen around 1871, but they're pretty sure he died sometime around 1888 or 89. But the Anchor Brewing, they still brew a beer called Breckel's Brown, and that's named after Gottlieb Breckel.
Oh, that's amazing.
Who was the brewmaster at what would later be called Anchor Brewing. He was a brewmaster from 71 to 88. So I'm like,
that makes me want to drink a Breckel's Brown.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel this like, I don't know. It's really weird for me. Like, I'm not a big history buff. I'm not a historian. Like, sometimes I think like, it's just boring, like, yeah, it happened, but whatever. And sometimes I think it's romanticized a little bit too much. But I don't know. I feel this awesome connection to Gottlieb Breckel.
In the middle of the gold rush, serving people cold beer. Yeah.
Dude, so cool. Good craft beer. Well, technically the steam beer wasn't that good.
Oh, more on that.
Well, it was like, it's sort of that like macro lager or a lager in general, like it's just a really crisp, refreshing beer that they could pump out quickly.
So what you're saying is it's on your time travel list? You're going to go drink a beer at Golden Brew?
So, man, now it is. So anyway, moving on with the story, Gottlieb Breckel died in around 1888. And then it continued to operate, but in 1896, it was sold to two other German brewers, Ernst Baruth and his son-in-law Otto Schinkel, and they changed the name to Anchor. Again, another one of those sort of unknowns. They don't really know why they picked the name Anchor, other than it just sort of was probably a representation of how busy a port city San Francisco was at the time. But yeah, so Anchor Brewing was born in 1896, which again is so mind-blowing.
That's crazy.
This is American craft beer in the 1800s. This is so cool.
They're very ahead of their time.
Yeah. I mean, granted, and I'll talk about this a little later. I mean, craft beer sort of died out and then had to be reborn. So it was definitely a thing then. Actually, Golden City Brewery was the 29th out of the 34 breweries in San Francisco. So there were 34 breweries in San Francisco in the late 1800s. They were 29th in size.
Wow.
There was actually a Philadelphia brewery that was the biggest brewery in San Francisco, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, that's a weird name.
Yeah, so they were the biggest brewery. Golden City only brewed about 8,000 cases of beer a year, which was like only 0.33%, like 1/3% of the total sales of San Francisco breweries. So anyway, they were very small.
Wow, that's crazy.
Which makes the story even cooler because they not only lasted so long, but they also reemerged. But yeah, so 1896, and then 10 years later, one of the worst events, especially in San Francisco history, was the 1906 earthquake and fires that destroyed a ton of stuff, destroyed a lot of records, and it also destroyed Anchor Brewing. So they did, a year later, open up in a new location. But that same year, Otto Schinkel, the son-in-law, one of the brewers, he was run over by a streetcar and killed. Living in the early 1900s was something else.
Very dangerous.
Oh my gosh. So crazy. But yeah, so there's just a lot of crazy stuff happened. So it changed hands again. Again, some German brewers took it over, Joseph Kraus and August Meyer. They kept Anchor going. And then, of course, 1920,
the worst year for beer in the history of the universe.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think that's an exaggeration. But yeah, Prohibition. It shut everything down. Probably the biggest hit to not only Anchor, but craft brewery and beer, because what reemerged even after Prohibition tended to be the lagers.
Well, yeah, they kind of hit a reset on the whole thing.
Yeah, it's brutal. It's a huge part of craft beer history, and yeah, Anchor shut down, and they're, as far as most people know, they didn't illegally brew during the time, which I think a lot of breweries continued to do. But as far as anyone knows, they didn't.
No bootlegging, huh?
And they just waited for the time to pass and see what would happen. So in 1933, the Prohibition was repealed, and they started right back up again. I mean, Joseph Kraus started making Anchor steam beer again, which is amazing, right? Like,
it is amazing.
I don't know. I think it's really cool that 13 years went by, and then as soon as they were able to brew it again, they just started brewing it again. That's pretty cool.
It's definitely a commitment.
Yeah, I don't know, but it burned down again.
Jeez.
There's a lot of fires in this time too. It's like, if you can avoid earthquakes and fires and the streetcars, and I don't know, there's probably multiple dangers. Mining, I'm sure gold mining, or
oh yeah.
Oh my gosh. We're just walking down the street. If you could survive all that, props to you. But yeah, so it actually burned down a couple times. They finally reopened it in a different building with a new partner, Joe Allen.
So at this point, it's been destroyed twice, and Prohibition has happened.
It's crazy.
And they're still going. This is an amazing story of perseverance.
Yeah, this is American optimism and industrialism at its finest. I think World War II played a part in this too, in the 1940s. But what ended up happening post-prohibition, like we alluded to earlier, was that it had hit a big reset button on the craft beer world. And I think some of the grain, I know like English beers were affected by this. Like a lot of the restrictions on grains and stuff that they could use during like tough times, and like during the World Wars and stuff, played a lot into like the beers that they made and the beer strengths. Beer strength was way low, just because they didn't have as much grain to use. So people just started to develop a taste for these lighter, mass-produced beers, and that's just what people knew. It was like people that knew craft beer like weren't around anymore. Like this like whole generation of beer lovers was lost.
Do you think our podcast could survive 13 years of prohibition?
Well, I don't know what we talk about, but
we talk
probably
about
cheese pizza.
Organizing to get alcohol legalized.
Yeah, we could probably make a nice smooth transition to like tasting cheese pizzas around, like going around to places and tasting their cheese pizza. We could reinvent. We could show our American
ingenuity.
Spirit. Yeah. But yes, it would be a very sad podcast. But yeah, so there was this just huge reset on the craft beer world, and it just became lagers and pilsners, and that was just what the Americans had a taste for. And Anchor, to their credit, they stayed open, but they actually ended up gaining a reputation for making some pretty bad beer. A lot of their beers would sour and go bad. And if people weren't already turned off to your beer, it's not gonna get any better if you're producing bad beer. So yeah, they started to just kind of fade away, and they had a really hard time staying open. I mean, to their credit, they hung on till about 1960, and then they just couldn't do it anymore. And so they were gonna close it down, but in 1965, a man named Fritz Maytag came to the rescue. Now, if you recognize the name Maytag, that's because he was of the appliance family. His grandfather was the original appliance man. His father was actually dairy. There was a huge Maytag dairy, so they were appliance and cow people. So he had a lot of money and a nice inheritance, and one of his favorite beers was Anchor Steam, and he got wind that they were going to close, and he decided to save it.
How cool is that?
Dude, he is my hero.
That's
I want
pretty
to
cool.
I want to meet Gottlieb Breckel, and I also want to meet Fritz Maytag. Like, what a freaking like gangster.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
He's like, oh, my favorite beer they're gonna shut that down. I got the money to save it. And okay, get this. This is where the money thing comes into play. He bought Anchor Brewing for $5,000. Now, if you translate 1965 money, $5,000 to today, it's about $45,000. So he literally got a half off deal from the original purchase. Like, he spent less money than,
That's insane.
Like, he spent barely more in real money, in real dollars, than they initially purchased it with. And this is like almost 100 years later. So pretty cool. So he got a great deal.
Value investing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was just like, I can save my favorite beer for a few $1,000s. Like, I'm going to do it. So he started making Anchor Steam beer again. And then they started to branch out and make other styles. So the 4 beers that they began to branch out and brew were Anchor Porter, the one I'm drinking today, Liberty Ale, Old Foghorn Barley Wine Ale. And,
I like that one.
And their and then their Christmas Ale, which is like a spiced beer. Very popular. They've made that every single year since 1975.
That's awesome. That predates both of us.
Yep. I mean, and at this point, what's interesting is like microbreweries or craft beer. Like that wasn't even vernacular at the time. Like it wasn't even a thing. Like they were doing something literally nobody in America was doing. Like making beers other than lagers and pilsners. Like.
All right, I'm starting to understand why you're such a Anchor Brewing fan.
I mean, it had to. That's what's so funny is sometimes it's hard to find an origin story of something, just because it's like there's like multiple avenues or multiple reasons why something got popular or something, but this is it. Like Anchor Brewing is the origin story of craft beer in America. There's other ones on the East Coast, and you can talk about Brooklyn Brewery, but even their big start for Brooklyn Brewery was a Brooklyn lager. I mean, they basically wowed people with their lager,
Right.
which is great, but
It's what everyone else is doing.
but it was just a really good version of what everyone else was drinking.
Yeah.
It was just a craft lager, but like they're brewing a barley wine.
Yeah.
Like I'm a huge craft beer nerd, and I've drank like 2 barley wines in my life. I mean, I have no appreciation for that style at all, and you can find them anywhere now, like if you want. And I still like that's not a style that I've even taken the time to really appreciate. And they were brewing one in 1975.
And they're still making it right now.
So cool. And a little side note on the barley wine, there's a question to whether it's 2 words or one, barley wine. The reason that you see it now mostly as one word is that they were applying to the ATF for the license to sell that beer, and they used 2 words, barley wine, and it was rejected by the ATF because they said that with the 2 words, like people weren't going to be able to distinguish it between a beer and a wine. They would think it was a wine, so they reapplied with it as one word, barley wine,
Barley wine.
and it got accepted.
Nice. It's like when you call customer service over and over again to get the person that gets you the result. That's what they pulled off. So there you go.
I had to take a nice big swig of my porter, which is just making me so happy right now. Yeah, so they started brewing these amazing beers. I guess at the end we can kind of talk about those beers a little bit.
Sure.
And what those styles were. But to kind of continue on their history, in 1984, they came out with a wheat beer. Again, groundbreaking. There is no other American craft brewer making a wheat beer. Like, it's the first American wheat beer since Prohibition, and it's called Anchor Summer Beer. Like,
That's awesome.
This is so amazing.
Yeah. That's really awesome.
If it feels like I'm geeking out, I am. Like, it's just, they keep making the first of everything and paving the way for so many amazing beers since then. One of the things they did with this wheat beer is that they basically brewed an amazing gateway beer because it maintained those soft, crisp aspects of the lagers that everyone was enjoying at the time, or that they had a taste for at the time, and yet it was just slowly dragging the people towards better beer.
It reminds me so much of Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, which is going to also link to this brewery, like where they're doing something that's just outside of the edge of comfort, but they know eventually people will want that thing, and thus they're creating like a whole new phenomenon. It's really cool.
And that the link to Sierra Nevada is kind of cool. I think you have a story of that, but one of the main links between those 2 breweries is the Cascade hop, which was a hop that came out of the USDA was doing a ton of experimental growth of different hop varietals. So they were mixing different hop varietals to make new ones. And one of the ones that came out of that was Cascade hops. Now, this was not this was like a failure, or considered a failure, because they were trying to merge a couple different German hops to make another sort of a mild hop, and they ended up making a not very mild hop. It had a really piercing citrus note. Well, both Maytag and Ken Grossman from Sierra Nevada, they loved it, and they just bought a ton of these Cascade hops and started brewing. So I'm pretty sure Sierra Nevada Pale Ale is, I don't know if it's 100% Cascade, but it's mostly Cascade. And so it's just that great citrus pine flavor that comes through that beer. And then the same Anchor started using it. I don't know if it's in their Liberty Ale, but anyway, they started using the Cascade hop, and that was sort of what was bringing American hops also into the forefront of the American microbrewery scene.
Yeah, so I don't know if this is urban legend or not. I was trying to get a source for it, but it's supposedly Ken Grossman drank a beer at Anchor Brewing And that kind of like set off the light bulb. That was the inspiration for him to start brewing and go for it and do a brewery. So I don't know if that's I don't know if that's like an urban legend. It's become overly romanticized, but it's
That's okay.
another.
It's a romantic story
Yeah,
again that I will cling
yeah.
to.
Yeah, we got to cling to it because it's so cool. So here you have Anchor, which is like doing all these firsts, then inspiring Sierra Nevada, which is responsible for Pale Ale, which is responsible for everything we're drinking now. Like, yeah, it's all tying back into
This
Anchor,
is
which
like
is
this is like Beyonce meeting Selena when she was a little girl, and Selena being like, "Yeah, just follow your dreams," and she created Beyonce. So
there you go.
Anchor Brewing
Nice.
created Beyonce. I mean Sierra Nevada.
Dude, good one. I usually do the weird analogies.
You're like good knowledge, good Beyonce knowledge there, buddy. Yeah. Okay. So here's another great tidbit. In 1989, this is another like sort of how history runs through Anchor Brewing. Like they were all about brewing old styles. Like they didn't care. They did not care one bit what anybody cared about. Like they just said we're gonna brew old styles, and they made this like 4,000-year-old recipe called Ninkasi, and I don't even. It was like a Sumerian beer. And they like some more old beer recipe was dug up and they made it like so they called it I think they just called it Ninkasi or something, but
And that
like
doesn't even use hops, does it?
no
It's old school beer.
like how cool is that?
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
That's so awesome. Then there was this other that same year, 1989. If you know your San Francisco history, there was also a major earthquake in 1989, and while they were brewing Anchor's, I think it was Anchor Steam, it was interrupted. The brew process was interrupted by the earthquake, and so it was kind of weird. Like it wasn't brewed the same way, but they bottled it anyway, and they called it the earthquake beer, and the label was upside down.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so it was Anchor Steam beer brewed with interrupted brew process by the earthquake, and so that's how you knew it was an earthquake beer. Was the label was upside down. How freaking cool is that?
It's pretty cool.
Somewhere somebody owned it still like has one of those bottles
Oh,
with,
that
with
would
the
be an
upside down label.
amazing collector's item. I'm gonna check eBay. I'm gonna get one of those.
Oh, that's awesome. So yeah, like other than that, like in 1993, they started a distillery, so they started to make a gin. So they're kind of branching out into that world, and then they just kind of rolled along. In 2010, Fritz Maytag retired, and he sold the brewery to Keith Greger and Tony Foglio, who just their main goals were just preserve the beers that they made and expand. I'm trying to think when they started brewing their IPA. I thought I made a note of that.
Oh, Fogbreaker?
Yeah, not really sure when that came out, but yeah, they started to move into the IPA world with the rest of the craft beer. And yeah, just fast forward today, they just actually this year are rebranding finally. Their labels are kind of like old looking, which is cool because that's sort of true to their nature. But
They're definitely old timey.
yeah, but they brought that into the 21st century with I think they got like a new art director to draw new bottles for them and stuff. So it's pretty cool.
And your bottle, I think I was looking at your bottle.
Yeah, it's the new style.
Yeah, I like that new style. It looks really cool.
So that's the history of Anchor Brewing. We can talk a little bit about their beers.
Yeah, so they still make a lot of the stuff we talked about. Like Steven, I'm not super into barley wine, but I do enjoy. I've had a few barley wines I like, and Old Foghorn is definitely one of them. So, and they still make that. You can get it right now. It's made year round, so that's very cool. Has a nice history to it.
I'm really starting to learn about this style, and what's so interesting is how closely related it is to the triple IPA. I just had absolutely no idea that barley wine was just essentially a very sweet, sticky ale with huge hop flavors and bitterness with sort of like a high carbonation and a low attenuation. I don't even know what I thought it was, but I did not think it was that. And now I'm sort of like, I want to try every barley wine I can find.
All right, next episode we're drinking
Yeah,
barley
I might have to.
wines.
Yeah, I might have to drink a barley wine. I actually should have. Well, I don't think I could have found an old foghorn, but I thought about trying to search around for one for this week.
You can definitely get it. Like they have it at my local place, Total Wine. I think you could definitely. I've seen Old Foghorn there before, and it does say it's brewed year round. But yeah, I'm poking around on the website, and it says first brewed 1975, and then that IPA was first brewed. Fogbreaker was first brewed in 2018.
Oh wow! So yeah, that's definitely new.
So yeah, they've only been doing that for 3 years. You know what it says for Anchor Steam? First brewed in 1896. That's really cool.
Oh, that's so amazing.
Yeah, and of course they still make that one, which that's really cool that they still make Anchor Steam.
Yeah, so I was right. They do use Cascade hops in the Liberty Ale. So if you can get your hands on Liberty Ale, I think that's when like honestly the first modern IPA. I think they consider it an IPA or maybe just like a pale ale. Actually, honestly, drinking Liberty side by side with Sierra Nevada, that might be the most amazing OG.
That's what we need to do.
Yeah.
Side by side, Liberty Ale and Pale Ale.
They're both Cascade. They're both like kind of malty. Dude, that would be so awesome.
All right, bookmark it for a future episode.
Yeah, but yeah, like a single hop ale, single dry hopped ale. The birth of craft beer right here was Liberty Ale. And then Anchor Porter was that same year. I can't imagine like I think if I traveled back in time, I would have to go to Anchor Brewing because it'd be the only place I could get a beer I like.
Get a craft beer. All right, Steven, I'm 100% sold.
I could look up at the tap list and be like, "Oh, you have a porter and an IPA,
no one has
and a pale ale. This is amazing."
That's so cool. All right, I'm officially an Anchor Brewing nerd. When are we getting matching tattoos?
Ooh, yeah, the Anchor.
I'm gonna get that Anchor.
It's like a Navy thing. The team of Navy, you get an Anchor on your tattoo.
All right, we're too old to join the Navy.
You know, it's really funny. I was thinking back in one of my college writing classes or English classes. I had to write this paper, and basically I had to write a paper on. The theme was like innovation in California or something, and so I had to write about something that started in California and became worldwide or widespread, but had its roots in California. I ended up writing, I think, about the credit card, because the birth of using a card, credit and using a card started mainly in California. So that was really cool. And now I'm just thinking, like, I want to rewrite the paper. I want to write a whole new paper about the birth of craft beer. Because how awesome would that have been? That would have been amazing.
That's great. It is really good history, and it's an amazing story of, like we said before, about perseverance. Their brewery was destroyed multiple
times. Prohibition basically ruined craft beer completely. And they just like immediately, Prohibition repealed, they just keep making the same beer they were making before that.
That's my favorite part.
And they're still making Anchor Steam beer.
You can still get it. All right, do you know what else is on the list? We gotta go to San Francisco and drink a Anchor Steam at the brewery.
Yeah, that would be really fun.
We should cosplay as 1800s gold painters.
Okay, now you're pushing it. Okay, don't bring me into your level of nerdiness.
Come on, it'll be awesome.
Well, I got the stash going now.
Right, I'll still working on it. Unfortunately, I can't grow a stash or a beard, so I'll have to think of an alternative.
Dude, that actually would be kind of cool. It'd be a good post for the gram.
We can't win them over with our beauty, but we can win them over with our, I don't know,
cosplay or 1800s cosplay. You know what's interesting? Actually, I just like looking through my notes. They're owned now by Sapporo.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I did see that.
Yeah, they sold to Sapporo in like 2017.
So they're not independent anymore. That's okay. We still love them.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. You do what you do to stay alive, okay?
Yeah, that's true.
And get wide distribution.
Very cool. So Yeah, I think that does it. Is that our deep dive into Anchor Brewing?
Yeah, I hope we did it justice.
I hope we
more
did
than me
too.
just saying like, this is amazing.
Because it is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to let us know. You can let us know at contact.attenuation@gmail. See, I wrote the email down this time.
Nice.
Pretty soon, Steven, I won't even need you.
No.
I'm gonna have so much written down on my script. I'll just say your lines for you.
All right, I'm just gonna put myself on mute here.
No,
Finish
don't
it.
do that. You should also follow us on Instagram.
Yeah. I even did a story today.
Did you figured out how to do a story?
Yeah, it was the first time.
Hard?
No, really easy.
I don't know.
Of course, it's easy.
We should have done stories on our beer trip, but we did not. All right, next beer trip, because we're gonna get lots of stories on Instagram.
So many stories and so many pictures. That was another thing. I was like, why didn't we have anybody take our picture anywhere we were at?
Nope.
We got like one picture of both of us, and it was a selfie.
Next time we'll do much better on the photography.
Yeah, we're horrible. This is the problem where we're what are we called? Like elder millennials, you know?
Yeah.
Or that like we grew up in the analog age, and then we are adults in the digital age, you know?
Yeah, I don't even consider us millennials. I think to be a millennial, you had to have like social media when you were in high school, and we barely had cell phones.
Yeah, so I just think, I didn't even have a cell phone until I was in college.
Yeah, so we don't know how to use all this newfangled technology.
Yeah, we are doing our best, okay? Just the fact that you have this podcast.
It's a miracle.
You know how long it took us to figure out how to record this thing?
But yeah, so our Instagram is attenuation.podcast.
Sorry, did we go off on a tangent?
We gotta wrap this up, Steven.
Okay.
So yeah, let us know if this is a cool episode. We'd love to do more deep dives into other breweries, kind of go into the history, some of the styles they make. Maybe if you guys have a suggestion for a brewery we should cover, hit us up on Instagram or our email. But other than that, I think we are going to bid you adieu, and we will see you next week for episode 12. So my name is Jason, and I'm joined by my best friend since 8th grade, Steven.
That's me.
And we will see you guys next time.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Attenuation, a beer podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on Instagram and Facebook for more fun content. We'll catch you next week. Cheers.